So there's a new paper from NVIDIA that you might want to see. They got AI to play Minecraft. Neato. But after reading this paper, I'm kind of blown away. The implications here are a lot bigger than I understood at first. So let's start with what the results were at first. But stick around because how they did it is, I think, much more important. Because we're beginning to see AIs writing code that improves itself. If you're curious to know where software development is going and how AI is going to play a part in it, you're going to want to see this. So they've used GPT-4 as sort of a reasoning engine. But as you'll see here, it's not really attached to Minecraft. Not really. Keep in mind that GPT-4 can't see. Vision is coming soon, but it's not rolled out yet. So it's blind. It can't see the screen, what's going on. So keep that in mind as we look at this. You can skip around using the chapters, and subscribing to this channel gives you a permanent intelligence buff. So don't miss out. All right, so this paper is called Voyager, an open-ended embodied agent with large language models. I think I first noticed it because Dr. Yunfan, one of the researchers on the paper, was the one that posted about it on Twitter. Voyager is the name of the AI agent, and he says Voyager continuously improved itself by writing, refining, committing, and retrieving code from a skill library. And also, we open source everything. So if you wanted to try this out for yourself, you can download it and let it loose in the world of Minecraft of your choosing. Here's some of the skills that it can do in action. So really fast, we introduced Voyager, the first LLM-powered embodied lifelong learning agent in Minecraft that continuously explores the world, acquires diverse skills, and makes novel discoveries without human intervention. Empirically, Voyager shows strong in-context lifelong learning ability and exhibits exceptional proficiency in playing Minecraft. It obtains 3.3x more unique items, travels 2.3x longer distances, and unlocks key tech tree milestones up to 15.3 times faster than previous models. Voyager is also able to utilize the Learn Skill Library in a new Minecraft world to solve novel tasks from scratch, while other techniques struggle to generalize. This is going to be pretty big, as you'll see in a second. So here's the Minecraft tech tree. If you are not familiar with Minecraft, basically you run around this generate world. All the worlds are random, unique. It's pretty deep. There's a lot of technology and a lot of things to uncover. It's a sandbox game so that you can do a lot of things. There's a lot of interaction with animals. There's cave systems, day and night cycle. There's a million different things that kind of happen in this world. It's very complex. It's 3D, which makes it that much more difficult for an AI to navigate. And you also have things like hunger. So you have to eat in order to survive. You have things like health, breath in case you're swimming underwater. You got to come up for air every once in a while. If you're down in a dungeon where there's no light, it's going to be completely dark. You have to make some sort of light sources in order to light your way. It's a complex and deep game. And in it, you sort of have this progression where you start getting the basic materials to create basic tools, and slowly over time that improves to where you can make stone tools, iron tools, etc. And you kind of go up this tech tree and get better and create more things with it. So here we see that Voyager consists of 3 key components: an automatic curriculum for open-ended exploration, a skill library for increasingly complex behaviors, and an iterative prompting mechanism that uses code as action space. So I didn't really get how this whole thing fit together first. So let's take a quick step back and let me explain how they sort of put everything together. So first of all, there's this thing called Mindflayer API. With it, developers can get into a game of Minecraft and do various things like automating movement, creating various events that can happen in the game, and basically affect the world in there in many different ways. So that's a standalone thing that people can use to interact with Minecraft. You don't need an AI or GPT-4 to do that or anything else. It's just a tool. Now, what they're doing is they're getting GPT-4 to use a lot of these commands to move the player around in the world. So for example, if we want them to go and mine something, then GPT-4 calls a certain function and it uses that. If we want them to, for example, place a workstation somewhere on the floor near the player, GPT-4 calls a script that does that, and your in-game character goes and does that. Players usually will use a keyboard and mouse to interact with the game. GPT-4 will use these commands to interact with the game. It doesn't get any special powers or anything else like that. It's limited by the same sort of rules and physics that the normal player would be. So it makes sense so far. You have GPT-4, you have Minecraft, and you have a way for GPT-4 to control Minecraft. So GPT-4 perceives the world of Minecraft not through vision, like we said, but rather through prompts. It gets updated with some basic information about its surroundings. So for example, on the left-hand side here, we see the information given to it. So for example, here we say, here's some things that you have in your inventory. What do you want to do? And so the reasoning, and then so GPT thinks about it. Its reasoning is, since you have a wooden pickaxe and some stones, it would be beneficial to upgrade your pickaxe to a stone pickaxe for better efficiency. And then it generates a task, craft 1 stone pickaxe. So it receives some information about its environment. It thinks about what it's going to do, and then it creates a task for itself to do it. By the way, here they use chain of thought reasoning in order to have it think through the stuff and then execute on it. Another example is, let's say we tell it, hey, you're next to a river and you have a fishing rod. What do you want to do? By the way, this is kind of summarized of what it sees. In general, it gets a lot more information and it gets the same information every single time. A little bit later, you'll see exactly what it's getting with every single prompt. Here, they're just highlighting sort of like the things that it saw from which to make a decision. So here it says, well, so we have a fishing rod and a river, we should fish. And then creates a task, catch 1 fish. If it's nighttime, there's a zombie nearby, it thinks, oh, we better fight this guy and protect ourselves. So task, kill 1 zombie. So far, everything makes sense, right? We have GPT-4. We give it some information, we tell it, here's what you're seeing, and then it reasons and decides what to do next based on that information. Here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. It will generate code to do the things that it wants to do. So for example, here it creates a function called combat zombie, so fight the zombie. Then it uses GPT 3.5 to describe what that function is. Basically, the function is about equipping a stone sword to combat a zombie. If a stone sword is not found, it will craft one. Additionally, it crafts and equips a shield for added protection. Afterwards, it proceeds to cook sticks in order to restore hunger. Once hunger is replenished, it actively searches for a zombie and engages in combat and kills it. So basically, if the goal was to kill 1 zombie, as we saw earlier, this function would get the player ready to fight it, get its sword and shield, get its food so that it's not hungry, so that it has full health, etc. And then it would journey to find that zombie and kill it. And so then that becomes a skill. So killing a zombie, fighting a zombie becomes a skill that then gets saved in the skill library. So GPT-4 is creating tasks for itself. Then it's creating skills that will complete those tasks. It's coding them. And it's saving those skills in the skill library for later use. And then we have the iterative prompting mechanism. So for example, if one of the skills that it's trying to create is it found some acacia plants, and it believes that sort of the next thing that it should do is create an axe from the acacia plant. It might create some code like this, right? It's saying, okay, so get some acacia plants and then create an acacia axe from it. And then it goes into iterative prompting mechanism. So it creates a function called craft acacia axe and everything else it needs to execute that. However, an error message comes back and says, well, there's no such thing as an acacia axe. GPT-4 realizes it should craft a wooden axe instead of acacia axe since there's no acacia axe in Minecraft. I hope that's pronounced acacia.
Acacia.
It's pronounced acacia. I apologize. Acacia axe. Whatever. So then it changes the code to say craft wooden axe instead of acacia axe. Or for example, here it realizes that it needs 2 more planks in order to create whatever shovel it needs. So I was curious, how do they actually prompt it to create this code? That seems kind of advanced. It seems ahead of its time a little bit. They actually did not explain it here in the blog post, but if you go and look in the paper, they do have that in there. So once you get past everything in the appendix, you have sort of a detailed description of how they built everything. So for example, when they're telling GPT-4 what it has in its inventory, it has this inventory thing that kind of just outputs what they have plus the number of units of it that they have. Or for example, what the nearby blocks are, etc. So this kind of an important point to understand is that, so instead of vision, like a player would be able to see the stuff around it, but you'd be limited by some things. You can see through walls, etc. You can see when it's dark. You also would have to recognize objects for what they are, etc. And if you had the API and you're using the API, you'd kind of have almost not God mode, but you'd be able to see a lot more than you normally would be able to see through walls. You'd be able to listen for certain events that happen that you might not have been aware of without the API. And so what GPT-4 has is somewhere in between those, because it can't really see, but it also doesn't actually have the API vision. It just has a list of things that are fed to it. And those things are inventory equipment, nearby blocks, other blocks that you've seen recently, nearby entities, so whether that's a pig or something dangerous like a villager or a zombie, various containers, biomes, so it's for example basically like, are you in a desert, are you by a river, etc. And then the time of day, that's important because zombies come out at night, of course. Health and hunger bars, and then also sort of your 3D position in the world. So in other words, this is its vision. This is its vision of the world. This is all the information that it has to make all the decisions and all the tasks and write all the software that then is going to use as skills to get further ahead in the game. The reason why this is important is as everybody's talking about increasing the AI models and making more advanced and all of that stuff, it seems like a lot of the research is showing that the existing models like GPT-4 has tons of room for what we can use it for if we just hook it up to the right tools. Or if we find a better way of extracting certain things from it, like chain of thought reasoning, for example, or tree of thoughts reasoning, show that it's going to be much better at certain tasks, like 10, 20 times better, not because we made the actual model better, not because we fine-tuned it or increased the number of parameters or better data or anything like that. It's just we were able to ask it better questions. Which, you know how in that book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or the World or whatever, they built this supercomputer to answer the greatest life's questions. They answer to life, the universe, and everything. And then like a million years later, it goes, the answer is 42. And they're all kind of angry at it because like, what does that mean? He's like, and it responds to them, well, that's the answer, but maybe you need to understand what is the actual question. This is kind of similar to it because they're working on creating vision, which is important. But as we can see here, just a little bit of this information fed into GPT-4 kind of almost substitutes vision in a lot of different ways. It's able to reason about all this stuff without necessarily being able to see it. So this is the full prompt that they use, that they go into GPT-4. So basically ChatGPT, they probably use an API, but this is the full prompt that they tell it. We'll come back to this in just a second, but keep in mind it's sort of like the big goal that we're giving it. It's not, find X amount of sticks or build a portal. They're saying your ultimate goal is to discover as many diverse things as possible, accomplish as many diverse tasks as possible, and become the best Minecraft player in the world. So basically the goal is for it to go out there and do as many things as it can, to sort of discover and unlock as many things as it can. So we'll come back to that, to the full prompt in just a second, but let's take a look at how we got it to write code to improve its own abilities to accomplish its own tasks in the world. So remember, everything gets uploaded to the skill library. So the skill library is basically a collection of all the functions, of all the code that it created for itself to be able to interact with the world. Now, it doesn't start with zero. It has, there's a bunch of stuff in there that's already, there's stuff in there that's already created with the MineFlayer API. So for example, there's things like mine block. So for example, this command here would mine and collect the specified number of blocks within a 32 block distance. There's, craft item, place item somewhere. You can smelt items. And there's killing various mobs. So that's like the animals and bad guys in the game, etc. But most of these are going to be pretty simple. It's very similar to what a player would do. So instead of where a player would click on something or look at something and click a button, this just allows them to just execute that thing. So that might allow it to do certain things faster than a player could, probably, I would guess. But I don't think it gives it sort of any power that it's greater than a normal player using, a keyboard and mouse would. And also they mentioned here that they use chain of thought prompting. So if some code fails, they first ask it to reason why the code from the last round failed. So meaning if it tried a certain code and then it came, the MineFlayer API threw back an error message, then we tell GPT-4 about the error message and we say, why did that happen? So then it thinks about and then it retries to create the code. Then gives step-by-step plans to finish the task and finally generate the code. So here's 8.4.2, the full system prompt for code generation. This was one of the interesting parts, I think. So we're telling ChatGPT this, or GPT-4. You are a helpful assistant that writes MineFlayer JavaScript code to complete any Minecraft tasks specified by me. Here are some useful programs written with the MineFlayer APIs. And so here it just gives it a bunch of sort of examples and feeds data into it. So, you can say, you can explore until you find a pig, or you can mine 3 cobblestone, or place a crafting table near the player, check the items inside the chest at a certain coordinates, etc. And they also give some helpful comments about when to run the code, how to do it better, etc. Then you have certain goals like moving directly adjacent to a certain block. So for example, when you're fishing, farming, filling buckets and beds. This is all fed into GPT-4. So we're telling it, hey, when you're trying to fish for something, for example, this is the way to do it. You want to have your in-game character get next to the block, get adjacent to it, and then execute XYZ. So then it knows, okay, so I got to use this function to get them there, then another function to start the process of doing whatever. Right, because GPT-4 in itself might not automatically know how to do any of those things. It's not trained on Minecraft. It hasn't specifically been trained or fine-tuned to run Minecraft. So it's reading the stuff and it's learning from it. Anyways, and there's pages and pages of this that gets fed into GPT-4 so that it knows how to do it. There's tons of comments as well as code, etc. All right, and then we explain to it, okay, so at each round of conversation, I'll give you code from the last round. So whatever code you made, I'll tell you whether it passed or failed. And then I'll also give you sort of all the information that we talked about, all the vision things that we're seeing. So we're seeing the biome, the time, nearby blocks, who's next to us, health, water, etc. Health, food, etc. What equipment you have, what inventory you have, all of that stuff. And then we're asking it to respond to that. So first of all, are there any steps missing in your plan? Why does the code not complete the task? So that's if something failed, why did it fail? You wrote some code so that you would catch some fish, but it failed. Why did your code to catch fish fail? What does the chat log and execution error imply? Every once in a while I see comments on YouTube videos or Reddit or Twitter or whatever. People will say something along the lines of, yeah, but all these sort of chatbots that they're putting out there, they're not actually artificial intelligence. They're sort of just these fancy autocompletes. They have no reasoning ability. I mean, I'd love to know what they think about something like this, where an AI, GPT-4, writes code about how to interact with a game that it never saw. And if it fails at writing perfect code, you can ask it, what went wrong? What did you get wrong? Here's what the output was. What didn't work? And then tell it, you know what, try it again. And then it comes up with a working code. I feel like whatever definition you use for reasoning or intelligence is becoming harder and harder to create a definition of it that would include human beings and would leave something like GPT-4 out of it. Like there's obviously an overlap. And then so it says plan. How do you complete the task step by step? You should pay attention to inventory since it tells you what you have. The task completeness check is also based on your final inventory. Code, and then you write the function taking the bot as the only argument, which I assume that means don't use God mode to just create the items in your inventory. Actually use your body, your embodied agent to run around and do the stuff that you're trying to do. It's funny because somewhere in these instructions, they actually say don't cheat. They tell it don't cheat, just only do what you're allowed to do, don't cheat. 2, reuse the above useful programs as much as possible. And then specify, so use this to collect blocks, don't use the dig function directly. So I think it's basically telling you to use certain higher level functions instead of the more crude lower level stuff. And then 3, your functions will be reused for building more complex functions. Therefore, you should make it generic and reusable. Also remember that your inventory changes over time, so always check what inventory you have, etc. And then so a lot of this other stuff is sort of like best practices, and also it's trying to make sure that the stuff that it outputs can be used as kind of its own unit, its own skill set that it can save and put it away. And then when it tries to retrieve it, everything it needs is there. So it's trying to say complete everything to where if we save it in a folder later, once you take it out, everything's there. And then the last one, name your function in a meaningful way so that you can infer the task from the name. So name it something that we know what it does, that we can guess at what it does. And then you should only respond in a format as described below, and they give the response format, where it explains its plan as well as the code. And then it has another prompt for generating function descriptions. I think they use GPT 3.5 for this one, but basically this is what they're going to use to describe what this thing does before they file it away in the skill library. And so for example, if the function is mine cobblestone, then it describes this function is about mining 8 cobblestones using a wooden pickaxe. First check if a wooden pickaxe is in the inventory, and then it goes through all the steps that it does and all the thinking that it does, all the checks that it has to do, and then through the actual action of performing that task. And so if we go back to the full prompt, so we already talked about a lot of this. So what the ultimate goal is, and then what information we give it so that it knows where we are, what's around it, etc. Its vision basically. And then you must follow the following criteria. You should act as a mentor and guide me to the next task based on my current learning progress. Please be very specific about what resources I need to collect, what I need to craft, or what mobs I need to kill. Your next task should not be, and then it says, so simply state the next task, like craft 5 items. The next task should not be too hard since I may not have the necessary resources or have learned enough skills to complete it yet. The next task should be novel and interesting. I should look for rare resources, upgrade my equipment and tools using better materials, and discover new things. I should not be doing the same thing over and over again. I may need sometimes to repeat some tasks if I need to collect more resources to complete more difficult tasks. Only repeat tasks if necessary. And so the next few things are basically trying to get it to go and explore and do new stuff. So a lot of this is just to keep it going and see how fast it can advance. And since there's some limitations, it's saying don't talk about placing torches or digging holes or etc., since they require visual confirmation from the screen. So avoid that. So an example of how it would respond would be, so first it spits out the reasoning. The inventory is empty now. Chop down a tree to get some wood, and gives you the task, obtain a wood log. So jumping back to this thing. So as you can see here, the Voyager is by far the best, fastest, more advanced thing as it progresses through the tech tree. The Voyager without skill library, as you can see here, not only is it slower, but as they mentioned in the paper, it plateaus somewhere here. So the learning stops, or the progress stops. It doesn't keep getting better. Where this thing certainly seems like it keeps going up and up and up. And as you can see here, it's much better than the sort of the competition. So here's that diagram again. So as you can see, now I think it makes a lot more sense. So it's doing all these tasks in the game. It's creating code to create, new skills for itself, right? It's testing it, it's getting back feedback, it's redoing it. And then once it is able to make it function, then it sort of adds that skill to the skill library. And then later it's able to retrieve it and use it in the real world. And then it gets into some of the results. So obviously the Voyager is doing a lot better, a lot faster, and a lot of this stuff. I don't think it really matters how awesome the results were. I mean, it's great to have a benchmark for future experiments, but the fact how they were able to use GPT-4 to sort of for its application here is kind of mind-blowing. Also, you can see that Voyager travels a lot further. It's not as lazy as the other ones. And then the next thing is efficient zero-shot generalization of two unseen tasks. So zero-shot meaning that it's not seeing examples of what it's trying to do. The question is basically, if you figured out how to make a wooden axe, and then you figured out how to make a stone axe, and then next you don't know how to make a diamond axe, can you figure it out based on your previous learning? Are you able to generalize that knowledge enough to where you can sort of apply it to an unseen task that you haven't done before? And interestingly enough, and this is where GPT-4 comes in, that's why I think it's such a powerful thing, because it is able to, in fact, generalize certain knowledge and figure out how to do stuff that it hasn't seen before. We clear the agent's memory, reset it to a newly instantiated world, and set it with unseen tasks. In the table above, so the fewer the iterations, the more efficient the method. What's interesting to note is that our skill library constructed from lifelong learning not only enhances Voyager's performance, so that's this AI agent, but also gives a boost to AutoGPT. So that's another thing that's outside of what they're doing. AutoGPT is its own thing. So this demonstrates that the skill library serves as a versatile tool that can be readily employed by other methods, effectively acting as a plug-and-play asset to enhance performance. And then one of the authors of this paper actually talks about, they asked him if GPT 3.5 can work as well. And he's saying, no, there's a pretty massive performance drop off. So here's that team again that was behind it. This is Dr. Yunfan. We're going to jump back to see his post on Twitter in just a second. And this is the Mind Dojo, building open-ended embodied agents with internet scale knowledge. And they were the 2022 Outstanding Paper Award winners, it seems. So Minecraft has more than 100 million active players who have collectively generated an enormous wealth of data. Mind Dojo features a massive database collected automatically from the internet. AI agents can learn from this treasure trove of knowledge to harvest actionable insights, acquire diverse skills, develop complex strategies, and discover interesting objectives to pursue. All our databases are open access and available to download today. Talk about how they have 2.2 billion words in English transcripts from the various videos that are online, thousands of wiki pages, tons of Reddit posts, comments, etc. I think they make a really good case for the fact that Minecraft is an excellent way, it's an excellent game to train these AI agents just because of the vast amounts of data that is already generated and available for use. So back to the Twitter post that started this all. So Minecraft is by far the best testbed for it, with endless possibilities for agents. And he talks about Voyager and the 3 components that we talked about, how they use the Mind Flayer API to create these skills. And now as I'm wrapping up this video, I just realized I had Flux on, so the monitor was dimming the entire time. So that's not you losing blood flow to your head, that's me not setting up the right recording environment. I apologize. But what do you think about this study? Do you agree with me that it's pretty insane how far GPT-4 just by itself can go, just as a base layer? How far we can pull it up and what kind of applications it can have? Do you think this is an example of AI writing its own code and improving itself? I know it's not improving GPT-4 itself, but it is improving its own ability, its own sort of avatar in the Minecraft world that's going about doing its business. It's improving that character's ability to do all the stuff in the world. And also, is it beginning to feel that code is almost like this intermediate step that will no longer be required pretty soon? It seems like we tell GPT-4 what to do, it writes the code, but it also has to like translate it in order to describe it. So it's almost like we're translating from one language to another. But since we're directly communicating with the computer with just natural language, does having to write code almost makes it more difficult? Can we just go straight to describing what we want to see in natural language? And then having GPT-4 write the code without us even seeing it, how far are we away from that? How archaic are code comments going to seem in 5 to 10 years? Somebody in response said Matrix, which is really kind of a good point because Neo, that was his whole thing. He was able to see the code of the Matrix and then do stuff within that world without actually necessarily seeing it with his vision. So GPT-4 is kind of like that. It's sort of picking up on these text things and then it's able to manipulate them in the environment. All right, let me know if I missed anything. What do you think? Is this as mind-blowing as I thought it was, or is it underwhelming? Don't forget, you do get a permanent buff to intelligence when you subscribe to this channel, so don't miss out. My name is Wes Roth. Thank you for watching.